Hello again, everybody. Today I want to talk about the name Jehovah. So Jehovah's Witnesses have that claim to fame. We've spread the name Jehovah around the earth more than anyone else. And you know what? I think it is fair to say that they probably have. That's probably true. And I was hung up on that for a while when I left the organization. I thought, is this really meaningful? No one else is doing this. Any other good thing about Jehovah's Witnesses, I'd look into it and either it was wrong or it wasn't really unique. Often Jehovah's Witnesses weren't even the main ones doing it. But for God's name Jehovah, it seemed to show that, hey, they are unique in how widely they've spread it. And yeah, that bugged me for a while. And I didn't really have like an aha moment where I realized, oh, they're wrong or this or that. Just various little things kind of led me to realize that this wasn't the checkmate that Jehovah's Witnesses think it is. They say, oh, we're the ones spreading Jehovah, so we must be the right religion. The other ones must be wrong. No, it's really not that important. Now I don't care about it at all. I don't think it matters whatsoever. But I want to share with you sort of some of the things I did see along the way that helped me to realize that this doesn't make Jehovah's Witnesses the true religion. So first of all, according to Jehovah's Witness doctrine, Jesus looked through all the earth and in 1919 chose Jehovah's Witnesses, said these are the purified, clean people, and that's their proof that they're the one true religion. But of course they weren't called Jehovah's Witnesses at that time. And in fact, at that time, they didn't really place that much emphasis on the name Jehovah. Not any more than other religions did at the time, I would say. But you can look into that history for yourself. But so why is that? Why do most religions, including the Bible students, before they were called Jehovah's Witnesses, not place that much importance on the name Jehovah? Well, simply put, they call themselves Christians because they follow Christ. So that tends to be predominantly the New Testament, right? So when they're looking at what Jesus did, what he said, what's written about him, they'll see Jesus talked about over 1,000 times, but never the name Jehovah. It's not in the New Testament. The New World Translation has added it a couple hundred times, but more on that later. We'll talk about the New World Translation later. But so generally, Christians have that focused on Christ and what he did, and in that context, Jehovah doesn't come up, so maybe it doesn't seem as important. But Jehovah's Witnesses, they proudly point to Isaiah 43, 10 and 12 and say, look, God said his people would be called witnesses of Jehovah. But Acts 1 verse 8 says, you'll be witnesses of Jesus. And in fact, there's several verses that talk about being witnesses of Jesus. So that's not really a catch-all either. So I remember when I was in the ministry, I would encounter people who didn't even realize that Jehovah's Witnesses believed in Jesus. That's how little emphasis is placed on Jesus. They seem to do a comparatively really poor job of emphasizing Jesus' role because they're really occupied with this idea of bringing Jehovah to the fore, talking about Jehovah all the time. Maybe it's because it's their hook, it sets them apart, it's a selling point, it's something different. And I thought it was cool when I was a witness, right? I'd go and get to tell people about Jehovah. And the funny thing is, even when it came to proclaiming Jehovah as God's name, a lot of the people I talked to didn't even realize that's why we were called Jehovah's Witnesses. They thought that was just the title of the religion, not that was the translation Jehovah's Witnesses use for the Hebrew YHWH, the Tetragrammaton, as they call it. But, I thought it was amazing. I could show people God's name in the Bible, and I did. I found people who'd never heard of it. They thought it was amazing to see it, and I felt so good. But now looking back, it's kind of funny because anyone who wants to know God's name easily can find it. I mean, if you search in Google, what's God's name, you're going to find right away information about YHWH, Yahweh, Jehovah, whatever. And you can find this in tons of books as well. This isn't the big secret that Jehovah's Witnesses make it out to be. Those who don't know probably just don't really care to know. And for that matter, does God care? That was something I started to wonder about. Because as I mentioned before, YHWH is not found in any copy of the New Testament. Why? I think the really simple answer is YHWH, as we translate it, comes from Hebrew, and the New Testament's written in Greek. So most Christians are content to say, hey, look, in the Hebrew part of the scriptures, God's called YHWH. We know his name, we know it's there. In the Greek part of the scriptures, that's not done. Instead, God's used or Lord is used, and they're happy with that. They know God's name, but they're going to imitate Jesus and call him Father, Lord, whatever, because they're Christian. Jehovah's Witnesses, though, they say, no, that's not the case. So this is from jw.org. It says, there are thousands of copies of the Christian Greek scriptures in existence today, but most of them were made during or after the 4th century of our Common Era. This suggests a possibility. Did something happen to the text of the Christian Greek scriptures before the 4th century that resulted in the omission of God's name? The facts prove that something did. And they go on about it, but in summary they say, hence, while Jews refused to pronounce God's name, the apostate Christian church managed to remove it completely from Greek language manuscripts of both parts of the Bible as well as from other language versions. Now, I'm not going to say Jehovah's Witnesses are wrong. Maybe, right? It's possible that YHWH was translated into some other form or did exist in some way in the New Testament and then was later removed. Maybe that happened. But what does matter is the implication that goes along with it. If I'm expected to believe that the apostate church managed to remove God's name completely, then how can I simultaneously believe that they changed nothing else? That everything is as it should be? Because Jehovah's Witness publications state time after time that we can be confident the Bible has not changed, that God wouldn't allow it, that nothing significant has been altered. Well, fine, if I'm expected to believe that God didn't allow anything significant to be removed, then logically, God did allow the apostate church to remove his name. See, it just doesn't add up with Jehovah's Witnesses' own logic. And most Christians, they don't mind, right? As I said before, they have God's name here in the Hebrew. They're going to call him Father, and that's okay. They don't worry about taking God's name and putting it into the New Testament, restoring it, as Jehovah's Witnesses claim to do. And that'll bring us back to translation. So Jehovah's Witnesses are not content to say the name used to be here and it wasn't, or we think. No, they say it belongs in the New Testament and we're bringing it back. And so they've done that hundreds of times. And they establish rules. They say we're only going to bring it back, maybe, for example, if it's a quote that had Jehovah in the Hebrew, or, some of their other rules. But the funny thing is, they don't even follow their own rules. If they brought Jehovah in every time that they say they should, it causes some problems with doctrine. There end up being scriptures that say Jesus is Jehovah, or talk about Jesus and Jehovah in the exact same way. So for those times, the New World Translation Committee doesn't put the name Jehovah in. They do leave it as Lord because it supports their doctrine. And again, I'm not going to talk about whether that's right or wrong, but I think the point is Jehovah's Witnesses should stop meddling with the Bible. Leave it alone. And there's lots of resources that go into good detail. So if you're interested, please look them up about how Jehovah's Witnesses have inserted Jehovah, how they break their rules. It is actually kind of interesting. But those are just some of the things that help me to see that, this widespread use of Jehovah is not really necessarily that big of a deal. I didn't even touch on the origins of the YHWH, the different ways to pronounce it, how Jehovah came about. That's interesting. Please look it up. There's also many other religions that do regularly use God's name, whether Jehovah or Yahweh or something else, but there's lots of groups that do that. It's not just Jehovah's Witnesses. But what I want to make sure to touch on is how strange the use of Jehovah is among Jehovah's Witnesses. So Jehovah's Witnesses associate Jehovah with the organization because Jehovah's Witnesses share that name, right? And I think that word association really blurs things for them. So when you leave Jehovah's Witnesses, you leave Jehovah. When you give a gift to Jehovah's organization, you're giving to Jehovah. When the organization publishes a new publication, it's a gift from Jehovah. When you go work at Bethel for Jehovah's Witnesses, you're working for Jehovah. When you follow the directions that you get through the elders, you're listening to Jehovah. It really enforces this idea that you are serving God. And I think that's why they use it. And they actually take it so far that it becomes really weird. So most Jehovah's Witnesses, if you were an elder or a ministerial servant, you'll probably have heard this. Lots of people would get counseled because in their public prayers, they would say Jehovah so much. They'd be like, oh, thank you, Jehovah. Jehovah, we're so happy. Oh, Jehovah, we're so blessed. We love you, Jehovah. Over and over and over, Jehovah. And yeah, you'd actually have to be told, hey, don't pray that way. It's weird. You're saying Jehovah too much. And it is weird. Jehovah's Witnesses say you need to use Jehovah to have a personal relationship with God. But that's weird. Like if you think about the relationship with your father, that's how they relate it, right? And God is called Father in the Bible, so fine. But to constantly use your dad's name, like if your dad was Jake, oh, hi, Jake. Thank you, Jake. It's good to see you, Jake. That's odd. It's not a normal way to use a name. And that's what Jehovah's Witnesses do. So, again, nothing big here. No big revelation maybe, but no, I don't think the use of the name Jehovah makes Jehovah's Witnesses the one true religion on earth. And in fact, I think they use it in a kind of odd way. And there's all sorts of other issues that I hope, if you have the time, look it up, check it out. Lots of good resources about it that I enjoyed at that time. But I hope that helps anyway for those who are struggling with this. And thanks so much for watching again. Bye for now.